Mhm. Dear friends, good afternoon. I think it's time to begin. This is 1 o'clock in Chicago, American Midwest, and it's 7 p.m. in UK. It's 8 o'clock, I think. No, I'm sorry. It's 8 o'clock in UK. It's 7 o'clock in Central Europe. And this is late night. It's 10 p.m. in Russia. So welcome for presentation of my friend Yuriy Yurchenko with his presentation, Understanding the Healthy Culture of Earthly and Cosmic Nourishment with regards to the individual destiny and community building matters. Yuriy is long-term anthroposophist, almost for quarter of century, for 24 years, exactly. He is a member of the Anthroposophical Society, and he joined Anthroposophical Society in United Kingdom. And he is a member of first class since year of 2000. So Yuriy has a family practice as physician, anthroposophical physician, and this is one of main topics, and he spent a few last years working on it. Now I would like to introduce Jonathan Handley, who would like to be a host, technical host of this particular presentation. Thank you so much for joining.
Yeah, thank you, Andre, and thank you everyone for joining. We are in an open meeting, and so in order to maintain order, I'll be making sure that everyone's microphone is muted until we come to a Q&A session. So please be understanding and patient if I have to mute you. When the time comes, just take turns orderly enough. I think after so much time, most people understand how a Zoom thing meets. But otherwise, feel free to contact me through the chat if you have any questions. Additionally, if you can and wish to donate, we invite you to do so at donate.rschicago.org. And I've put that link in the chat as well. Oh, and we're recording today's session. Yuriy is kind enough to let us do that. So it will be available afterwards. If in the question and answer session you have a question but would rather not be part of the recording, just mention it and we can edit you out. Otherwise, thank you for coming, and I will hand the reins to Yuriy. Thank you again.
Welcome everyone. Thank you very much, Andrei and Jonathan, for introducing me and for making arrangements for this broadcast. So we've got today a very interesting subject and why it is important for us. If we remember what Dr. Pfeiffer learned from Rudolf Steiner on his question, what are the hindrances for the anthroposophists? Why so many anthroposophists cannot get through and understand the deep meaning of the spiritual science? And Rudolf Steiner answered that it is because people eat wrong. So it's an inadequate eating which prevents people from understanding the spiritual science and the spiritual truth. And we also know that on this question, what are the obstacles for those who are on the spiritual path? and know about anthroposophical books and esoteric lessons, Rudolf Steiner pointed out that it is not enough people who practice what was described in his book, The Knowledge of the Higher Worlds and its Attainment. So today we are concerned with the first subject, with the eating problem. Why it makes obstacles for us. And I was thinking as a doctor on this matter and gradually realized, and about 3 years ago, it was a kind of revelation, and I would like to share it with you, my dear friends. And thank you for coming. Thank you for your interest. And I try to be not too complicated. I'll try to use ordinary terms for lay people, as one can say, but occasionally allow me to bring some scientific terms and evidence to support my statements. For the sake of comparison, please allow me to use trivial examples like driving a car. Those who drive a car, they usually acquaint themselves with the vehicle, with its technical possibilities, design, and then they learn the rules, the traffic rules. And then once they got it, this theoretical part, they feel safe. And then their effort is rewarded because they afterwards feel comfortable on the roads and don't know where the risks are. So when you come to someone and saying, I would like to tell you something important about the food habits, about the nourishment. Some people feel offended and they become angry because this subject is so private and nobody can embark, nobody can interfere into someone's freedom, and especially this area is very sensitive, very gentle. So one has to make sure that one does not intrude and talks in a very diplomatic way. Why is that? Because from the very early years of our lives, we as babies are fed from our mother's milk. There are exceptions, of course, but we are talking about the major general rules, the general events, happenings. And when the child is stopped breastfeeding and changes for his earthly nourishment, then it is a kind of substitute. The nature now becomes a mother figure for us. It provides us this earthly nourishment, and we feel very much attached to our food, which we find in our surrounding. And in every region, in every country, there are their own traditions which go hand in hand, side with the influence of that region from the elemental beings, from the landscape where you live. So with your breath and with your food, you absorb not only the mineral substances which build our body, but also you absorb the spirit, the archangel of your people. These forces work through the elemental beings, which play a very important role in our lives. And briefly, we could mention from the spiritual science this fact that during the night we are connected through these elemental beings to the higher hierarchies, to the angelic beings, archangels, and archai. And so, apart from your archangel of your people, you are in a connection with the archai if you, during the day, pay enough attention to the spiritual part of your life. So if we don't spend time to think about the spiritual aspects of our lives, if we don't bring it through our feelings, through our thinking, and through our will, we have less chances to be connected with the higher hierarchies, especially with the archai, whose task is to go deep into our etheric body during the daytime, during the waking time. And it is his responsibility to work through the etheric body and provide our health. So, and this subject of nourishment, it relates to these three spheres as well. So not only the exercises, esoteric exercises like meditation, concentration, studying, lectures, and books of the spiritual science, which help to bring us into contact with these hierarchies, but also the way how we eat, our choice of eating, whether we eat with indifference or with attention in a praying mood, whether we distract our attention while eating, we are doing something else, reading a newspaper or whatever, listening to a radio. It matters. And Rudolf Steiner, in one of the lectures, pointed it is not a matter of indifference whether people drink alcohol, for example, or not, for the whole evolution of mankind. And if we help each other to understand the importance of this subject to all our social community, because we as a humankind, we belong to one body, spiritual body, and we are responsible for each other, and we depend on each other, and we should be concerned with this matter more seriously, because everyone is unique and everyone is involved into the whole organism of the humankind. And before our birth and after our death, we all participate in building the cosmic human body, the spiritual body of man. And apart from this collective work, we are busy also with creating our own future cosmos. Every one from us is a spark of God, is a possibility for arising a new solar system, a new cosmos. And it is up to us whether we follow the hints from the spiritual science or whether we neglect and find the undesirable consequences from our choice. And I congratulate you, those who came across anthroposophy, who discovered in their life this spiritual science. I congratulate you because it is a source for our survival. And this brings us a healthy source of living and a possibility for a further future, for our future development, which is predestined by the divine world. And if we ask ourselves, what is human being? What am I? What I am? And it is the word. Gods speak words and create us, beget us. It is the God's word which brings us forth, which creates us, our ego, our self, our I. It is the weaving of the gods, of the head God, Godhead. And our physical body, in terms of the esoteric knowledge, is just a semblance. It's just accumulation of the mineral substances which we derive from the surrounding physical earth. Because we are, one can say, visitors during the time between birth and death. The earth visitors. And we are here for a while, for a season, one can say, because our eternal path and eternal part of ourselves. It is out of space and time. And when we remember this, then we can be quite serious about our choice with regards to the nourishment. And today, I'll try to show you what are the practical aspects of this subject, so that after our meeting, you can be more vigilant about the time when you eat, because it brings some risks. And the food stuff which is working as a poison more than it works in other times. So I'll show you a slide. So those who studied anthroposophy, they know about the aspects like before setting for the meal, one has to come into a praying mood, because it will provide your nourishment with a proper digestion process. Then it is very important to consider the aesthetic surroundings, where you eat, what you see, what you look at while you are eating, and what you think about. I would suggest, before starting the meal and after a prayer, just consider that in your food stuff, the physical aspects of food contains the form of, one can say, the grain, those parts of the plant world, or those who eat, who are not vegetarians, they remember where it is derived from. So you consider the form. The form comes from the Holy Spirit. It is good to consider that. And then the substance has also its life. When the plant grows, or animals leaves, animal leaves, and the living part of the substance, it belongs to Christ sphere, to the second logos. And then in the mineral substance you eat, the proteins, fats, and carbohydrates, minerals, in this physical substance, there is a will of the Father, the actual biochemistry. So it is important to consider all these aspects: the form, life, and the will. Then also it is good to consider the grain of the day, which corresponds to our solar system. So you probably know this, and who have not come across of this aspect, we can share this slide with you later, so that we don't we don't miss the time for other considerable aspects. So, and also, you know, about the quality of food, one has to consider whether it is a natural farming, like biodynamic or organic farming, and is the food is produced in a healthy environment without pesticides and without nitrogen, salts and phosphates. And then one has to consider the conditions of preserving, because it will also affect the foodstuff, the quality of food, and also the way of preparing and cooking. About all these things we can speak if we have time. And also, most of us, most of you who came across anthroposophy know about this famous picture that the upside down plants parts correspond to those parts of the human beings which we called threefoldness: to the nervous system, nerve and sense system, the head organization. You can see the roots correspond to the system. Then in the opposite pole, you find that metabolic and lymph system, which corresponds to the flower of the plant. And the middle part, which connects two poles, is the rhythmical system, or heart and lung system, which in the plant belongs to the leaf and stem. So, and then what we have to talk tonight in my place on the continent, and morning, afternoon time in America. It is the question: what foodstuff, quantity, and when to eat. Quantity is quite straightforward for most of you, so we will not stop. We won't stop at this problem for the time being. And now we turn to the discovery which came to myself, and it is in this diagram, and I'll show you on a separate slide, on a separate picture, how I arrived at this diagram and what it means. So briefly speaking, why we can talk about the mistakes of the modern physiology, because it is a very sophisticated part of medicine, and there are thousands of minute details doctors study, and those who are involved in this subject. They study the process of digestion, and they don't come to the understanding of the substantial, considerable features of our digestion process. Because the modern science, which has the materialistic outlook, it bases its assumption that the human being can be compared to a machine which has wires in terms of nervous system and tubes where the blood runs and lymph. And regarding the food aspect, they just think that it is kind of fuel for people, that people fill up themselves, their machines, and run until they next time when they need to put more fuel in their fuel tank. So this is the mistake, great mistake, to compare a human being with the machine. It's mistake number one. And mistake number two is to compare a human being to the animal kingdom, because the subject of physiology of digestion solely arrives from the work of Ivan Pavlov, the Russian physiologist, who in 1904 received a Nobel Prize for his discovery. He made his Nobel Prize speech on the 12th of December in that year, at the beginning of the 20th century. And in his speech, which is available in English also, you can see that there are many places when he is proud of his discovery and compares the human being with a machine. And so this number two, that the modern science compares human being to an animal, this mistake can be defeated by the anthroposophists, by us. You can tell any physiologist that the greatest difference between man and animal, it is not only the complete uprightness and the abstract thinking and the capacities to remember and to create things, do art, and to do the history and bring the past, present and future together, and speech and music, etc. But there is a simple physiological fact which helps you to defend the materialistic assumption that the human being belongs to the animal kingdom. And it is the thing that when animal consumes their food, in their excrements there are plenty of organic stuff. For example, in birds it is almost 90% of organic matter. In horses, about 60% of organic matter. In cows, about 70% of organic matter. In cats and dogs, it's about 30% of organic matter. So you see that every animal displays in their excrements traces of organic matter in various percentage amount. But only the human being, when human being is healthy, in their excrements, in their emotions, there are no organic matter. And it reminds us a process of burning. When you burn an organic matter, the end product of this process are minerals. So you see that we humans have something in us which allows us to burn this organic matter completely when we are healthy. And what is that that makes this process possible and distinguishes us from the animal kingdom? And it is the ego organization. It is the I. It is our self. It is the self of our being, of our real human being, which in fact is invisible, and it is out of time and space, where our physical body is manifested on the earth. And every time when you look at yourself in a mirror or look at another human being, just consider this aspect of reality, that we are like stars. When we look at the stars, Rudolf Steiner says that we see the shining stars and they manifest the external light, but in fact these are the bodies of gods. So when you see human beings, these are the visible aspects of gods, of the spiritual aspects walking on the earth. So have a look at this slide. During the daily dynamics of our body, we can see that when we wake up, let us put 6 a.m. In the physical terms, we can detect that such things as bile, blood sugar, pancreatic juices, digestive juice, hemoglobin, adrenaline, blood pressure, they are on the on the rising level of their activity. And they reach a kind of peak at the noon. And that corresponds to our incarnation, when in the morning our ego and astral enter into our physical and ether body. This is fire, which is ready to consume, to digest the foodstuff which we eat. And when we eat protein and fats, it is the bile which is the substance which is able, together with the pancreatic juices, with the pancreatic enzymes, digest and destroy the protein and fats in our body. And in this diagram, in this chart, you see that around 3 p.m. it comes nearly to the 0 point. It is a scientific fact. Then you see that other substances which our body produces, actually this is the work of our ego. they have their peak activity at the noon, and then the level of activity diminishes. So that by the time like 6 p.m., you see that even the pancreatic enzymes, pancreatic juices, they are quite low. And the blood sugar also demonstrates this low presence in the body. And gastric juice level, the concentration of the gastric juice is on a low level as well. So this, you see that our ego and astral is preparing after the noon, gradually preparing for entering the spiritual world, departing our physical and etheric body. And this actually corresponds to the level of bodily juices which our ego and astral produce during the daytime. So, and now if we put it in a circle, so that this 24 hours, like a clock, making this diagram, now we can easily see that in the morning hours, when our ego and astral come into our body, it demonstrates a kind of cyclic activity, reaching the peak at the noon and gradually coming to the minimum level of its activity at about 6:30. So that after 6:30, there are no enzymes in the body which are able to destroy the foodstuff which we ate. So you already noticed that after 3 p.m. there is no bile, virtually, just the traces of the bile. And that means that the difficult stuff to digest, like proteins and fats, they have to be consumed by this time. So either in the morning for the breakfast or for the lunch. If you missed your lunch, you cannot make up in the rest of the day, because in that time you poison yourself, because proteins without the enzymes, without the bile in the body, they decay and it is a poison. Mind you, every foodstuff works as a foreign subject and can be considered as a poison, which Rudolf Steiner also points. And it is the degree of the poison which matters. When you consume the proteins and fats before 3 p.m., you are on the safe side, because you digest, you manage to destroy, to fire this, to burn these proteins and fats. Whereas if you consume fat and proteins after 3 p.m., you run the risk to get poisoned. So, and also you see here is one additional moment. You see this 3 p.m. and then next one here is 5 p.m. I just made this arrow here, and this is the point in the day where you have to stop eating fresh fruit and vegetables and juices, fresh juices, because before 5 p.m. you are able to digest them properly, the fresh leaves of the plants, roots, and juices from the plants and the roots. Whereas after 5 p.m. you run the risk to get poisoned because of the fermentation of the fresh fruits and vegetables. And this poisoning is additional poisoning you see to what the fats and proteins can contribute in terms of harmful effects on us. And now you see that this daily activity, it corresponds exactly to the spiritual entrance of our ego and astral into our physical and etheric, and leaving our physical and etheric at the night time during the sleep. It is a normal process for us. And the simplest way to check yourself whether you eat properly is to check your breath, because after 15 minutes after the meal consumption, you can feel it in your breath. Just put a palm or palms before your mouth and breathe and smell it. And if you are satisfied and feel the freshly smell and not rotten from the fats or not bad smell from the protein stuff, or not fermented from the fresh food stuff, then you are all right. And also you can look at your tongue. If your tongue after 20 minutes, half an hour after the meal is clean, without any cover, then you are on the safe side. So these two things help you to check yourself, because as Goethe said, the German famous poet and scientist, who said that the most perfect tool for studying the nature and the human being is the human being himself. So the additional thing to check whether you eat properly, where you nourish yourself in a proper way. Please excuse me, some physiological mention. It is the motions. And Rudolf Steiner pointed that looking at human motions, a person can judge the condition of their spirit. It means that by the consistency, by the smell, by the form, shape, and the evacuation of the bowels. Usually it is the morning time before breakfast. You can be sure whether your nourishment is safe. And here it is in Russian, it says protein and fats and those food substances which are difficult to digest. But you can find it easily on the internet and in the textbooks. So I won't keep your time by enumerating those substances, because what I said to you is a guidance, is a guideline for you, and you easily will remember this. But of course, you can print out this diagram for yourself, so that, like learning to drive a car, you have to remember the traffic rules, and then it stays in your memory, so that looking at the diagram, at the chart, you can remind yourself every time you eat something. You can just see whether it is a proper time for this food consumption, or you have some risks to be poisoned. So now allow me to come to this aspect which you can find only in the spiritual science. And please forgive me for bringing this difficult, even for doctors, for anthroposophical doctors who study anthroposophical medicine. And it is just part of it, because the digestive process is so complicated that in his recommendations for the establishment of a medical course for doctors, Rudolf Steiner pointed that he said that the strategy for studying anthroposophical medicine should consist in 3 courses. First course should teach us about the nature, about the cosmos. So we come to know the periphery of our world. We learn about the 4 ethers acting in the earthly spheres. We learn about the evolution of mankind. Then the second course corresponds to studying the so-called threefoldness of the human dynamic architecture, and the so-called fourfoldness of his physiological aspects, of the earthly aspects, which correspond to the 4 states of substance in the physical domain. It is the solid, fluid, airy, and warmth states. states of the substance. And the threefold human being we already mentioned at the beginning of our introduction. And now you know what parts of the plants correspond to each part of our threefold system, so that you consider in your diet these parts and supply every region in your body. And now allow me to mention something which I would say it would be a home task to meditate on this and contemplate. And the thing is, the esoteric knowledge about the process of digestion is that whatever we consume from the surrounding world, be it mineral, protein, fat, carbohydrates, it does not become a part of our body. This was the statement of Rudolf Steiner. And in late 50s, early 60s of the 20th century, scientists who studied where the eating components of what I mentioned end up in our bodies, in which parts, they marked with the nuclear particles, protein, fats, and carbohydrates and minerals of the meal stuff, and discovered, after repeating many times their laboratory experiments, that indeed none of the substances which we consume become part of our body. It goes through the digestive canal from the mouth to the end. Because as you remember, everything what we eat, we burn up. And it is a kind of transition. So it was a riddle for the scientists to explain their findings. And instead of explaining, because they couldn't find a reasonable explanation for these facts, they just put it aside. And none of the modern textbooks for the current medical professionals contains these facts. And that shows a weak element in our modern day science, in our official science. So the conventional doctors, they look at a human being as a machine and think and describe to other people that whatever we eat becomes a part of our body. But as you already heard now I mentioned that Rudolf Steiner pointed out to this, that none of the molecular, none of the so-called atom of what we eat, from what we eat, becomes part of our body. So now please move with your body, because we have spent an hour and we haven't done any eurythmy or Bothma gym during our session, and in order to move our blood so that our attention will be more sharp, please move with your body, do some squats or pushing ups or whatever, move, walk around in your room, because every session of study should consist these physical activities. Otherwise, we limit ourselves in understanding the subject matter we study. So in a moment, I will come to that part which I would say it would be a home task to meditate on. So move with your shoulders, with your hands and arms, with your neck, so that you feel more alive. Now, my dear friends, my brothers and sisters, I come to the most difficult topic of our subject. Cosmic nourishment. So, from the foodstuff we consume, every scientist can confirm that in the digestive tract, if we try to trace what happened with the protein, fats, and carbohydrates, we find that they lose their identity while passing the mouth, where we chewed the food, and then it's saturated with our saliva, with the ptyalin, and they came to the stomach, and additionally was worked up with the juices of the gastric juices, and then coming further to the duodenum, and then the bile and the pancreatic juices now are involved, further in the digestion and destroying the substances. And then going further, the foodstuff gradually in the intestine loses its identity, and there is an area known as villi, where coming to, and there are so many, about 40 square meters, if you consider the space they occupy. So, and at the borderline, going through the lining of the villi, on the other side, there are blood vessels and lymph vessels receive this what lost their identity, these components. And there is a counter image from every substance which was destroyed, which was consumed first and then destroyed and lost their identity. The counter image from the cosmos now comes and enters through our breathing and this blood and lymph, and contributes to the building of our nervous system. And our senses belong to this system. So whatever you see, whatever you hear, whatever you experience through your senses of your touch, sense of touch, pressure, so everything comes through your nervous system and builds up your nervous system from the periphery, from these counterparts. And now, having built this nervous system, one can call it one stream of nourishment. The nervous system now receives from the rest of the cosmos, because the nervous system was built from the surrounding of the earth. It is the nearest to our sphere. But as you know, the sphere, the further we go from the earth, in terms of spiritual, it comes from the etheric to the astral, to the lower Devakan, and then to the higher Devakan. And from those higher spheres, through the nervous system, we get those counterparts which in their diluted amount, one can say like in a homeopathic dilution, they constantly enter with every moment of our life, with every breath. They enter through our senses, through our skin, through the nervous system, and build up our flesh, our body, our skeleton system. And here on the picture you see on the left hand side this nervous system, and on the right side you see Leonardo da Vinci's drawings, human bodies in their flesh, and also down there, down this picture, also from Leonardo da Vinci's the skeleton and the vessels, blood vessels. So now, my dear friends, you see that thanks to the spiritual science, we can understand the deep meaning of the eating, because the food consumption, it is on the one hand is a spiritualizing the substances, those elemental beings who sacrifice themselves to the point of density, because they live in a reified condition in the spiritual dimension, and then they affect us through the food stuff we eat. And in the night time also, when we have to come to the scene of our life, we meet them, and through them we either find a connection with the higher hierarchies, with the angels, archangels, archive, or we don't. And it is up to us whether we poison yourself and limit ourselves and lose the possibility to be connected with the spiritual world and to replenish our forces through the etheric body. Or we, during the daytime, we stimulate our astral body, our etheric body, our ego organization with the proper process of nourishment, eating in the right time of the day, the right kind of food, watching for the amount we consume, because as Rudolf Steiner said, overeating, especially protein, softens our brain. And also meeting the protein from the animal world, it brings to our scene of action additional aspect, the astral aspect, which we have to overcome. And this aspect also makes a wall for us on the way to be connected to the spiritual world. It makes it hard for us to break through. Therefore, now you understand why Rudolf Steiner said that it is the inadequate eating which contributes to the lack of understanding of the spiritual things of the world, and makes a wall on our spiritual path and slows down our spiritual progress. And now, as you remember, at the beginning of our talk, we mentioned that the ego organization has been brought forth by the word of the gods, by the word of the God. And the ego, as a spark of the God, has possibilities like seeds in itself to evolve to the spirit self, life spirit, and the spirit man. It is our highest spiritual goal. And we've got not much time left, because up until the 2100 year, we have to achieve what Rudolf Steiner calls the thinking of the heart thinking. And Rudolf Steiner also calls this the fifth chamber of our heart. and it is 80 years left by that point in our evolution. And if we become more disciplined and awake to these problems with the nourishment, then we help to further our progress. And we also remember that when we poison yourself by eating in the wrong time, we bring additional obstacle. We our double, because our double nature is very active when our acidity level is increased. And we can talk about this next time, because I think I gave you already too much for today, and I'm sorry if I overburdened your attention and it was difficult with my way of explanations. So, friends, feel free to ask questions, and if you are interested in this subject, we can talk more about this social aspect, because this bringing the double, activating the double through the inadequate food consumption, it destroys our social links, because when we poison ourselves and activate our double, we become antisocial, not only to the rest of the humanity, but in the first place, we become antisocial to ourselves. And it is evident through such things like bringing additional destruction to our body through the harmful substances like drugs, alcohol, making tattoos, exposing our body to other sorts of distractions and what undermines the body, like cold, excessive cold, or say when people do various sports like fighting, trying to bring pain to the body, experience this kind of sharp feelings, this unhealthy, bring out of balance, and to be antisocial to the rest of the world is to be not able to perceive in another human being his spiritual I, his spiritual self. And it means the lack of understanding, the lack of hearing, because the double will not allow us to accept opinions of other people and to experience, to feel others' pain in themselves. And that means that they can bring destructive elements in the social organism, bring pain and harm without feeling sorry for their actions. And now you understand that the nourishment process contributes to this largely, especially if in today's culture people eat too much in the evening for supper, trying to make up for the feelings of satisfaction. And mind you, Rudolf Steiner mentioned that there is nothing more harmful for us if we crave to get satisfaction from the food and try to repeat this experience. And the food becomes for us a source of satisfaction. Instead, we must consume food in a praying mood with a joy, a feeling of love and gratitude that we've been given this food. We have it for us, and we can sustain our body, and we can bring enthusiasm from our body. In fact, this first part of this difficult esoteric cosmic nourishment consists of building up the nervous system from the foodstuff we eat, derived from the earthly sphere, and the enthusiasm which comes from the kind of energy which is released from those uncharmed elemental beings which were put into the condition of solid substance in plant and animal life. So, dear friends, thank you very much for your attention. And now, just let's look through our slides, and if you've got questions, additional thing, it is what you know, the so-called litmus test paper. Apart from checking your tongue and the breath from your mouth, you can get from any apothecary, from any pharmacy, this litmus test paper, and look after meal consumption in about 15-20 minutes. You touch your tongue or just use this, your saliva, put on this piece of paper and see what color it shows. If it is this kind of greenish, yellowish, it is neutral, and it can show you sort of yellowish coming to the acid side. and this kind of sort of orange towards orange color, then you are on the safe side. But if you see that your saliva becomes more reddish, or this kind of violet, purplish, more violet, I would say, then you know that your food consumption lacks of proper attitude, and you have to check, looking at another diagram. Looking at this diagram, where you should correct your dietary habits. So, my dear friends, thank you very much for being together with us on this meeting. And if you are interested, we could talk more about this in our next Zoom meeting. And now feel free to ask questions. And actually, just one thing as an example how this works. 5 years ago, I was invited as a family doctor into a summer camp for Waldorf children, 12 years old children. They have this every year, and when I noticed that during the day they break this normal nourishment arrangement and disregarded my advice to follow these rules, then I said, all right, let's see what happens after. We should expect some antisocial behavior. And indeed, everybody could confirm that it happened that children behaved quite badly, and teachers were quite antisocial to each other and to children, were shouting, and it was a conflict. It brought to the conflict, and people were not happy at all with the consequences. So next time when it happened, similar thing I already pointed out, and those adults responsible for the camp, they said, all right, let's see. And then again, they saw a similar happening. So now it is an example from the real life. And also, I can tell you that because now I'm involved into a community building. There is an anthroposophical community village we're trying to establish not far from St. Petersburg, about 5 hours drive south. And the lady who moved there with her family, with her child, 2 years old child, Daniel, that lady follows after attending my seminar on the eating topic. she already follows more than for a year. And then she discovered that the spirit connection improved, because now she lives in a village, not in a city any longer, exposed to the natural environment, to the healthy natural environment, and follows the rules which you've heard now. And she feels that much better. And I said, all right, I will pass to our friends on this meeting about your personal experience, so that people know that it works. It is not a theory. It is a real stuff. It is a real McCoy, like Derbyshire people say. And I see Erica Babs joined us, and she can confirm that people say like that. So, dear friends, please ask questions.
Yeah, thank you. I was going to say there's been a number of questions in the chat. If anyone wants to unmute themselves to ask those questions, feel free. Otherwise, I can read them from the chat. And if anyone has other questions that haven't been asked in the chat, of course, feel free to unmute.
Okay.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Could we ask what is supposed to be eaten after 6 o'clock? It sounds like you can't after 5 o'clock. How do you eat supper?
Supper should contain, if you decide to have food from plant, like leaves, fruits, roots, then you have to bring temperature, i.e. fire. So because as you heard from the beginning, when we enter with our ego and astral, it reminds us a fire which burns the organic stuff we have eaten. And after 5 p.m., this lack of fire, we have to make up with the real fire from our cooker. So gas or whatever fire. And remember that the electricity is not very good a source of thermal cooking, because it destroys the foodstuff and brings death to whatever was alive. Even when you boil water in your boiling container, now it becomes dead water. You have to vitalize it, either by a prayer, or there is a vitalization method which I can either post to you in the video. There is a video made. It was made after the seminar with the Italian biodynamic farmer, how to vitalize the substances, and especially water. Or you just do prayer so that the substance becomes alive if you use the electricity while cooking. Because when you cook a meal, this fresh and fresh fruit and vegetables, then you bring this substance to a degree higher than the physical in the raw condition, and make sure that you don't overcook food, like from the wheat stuff like spaghetti, etc. It's better just cook it, undercook it rather than overcook it. Because if you overcook it, it brings already acidity into your body. It works more as a poison, a higher level of poison. And if you want to drink juice after 5 p.m., just warm it up, drink it as a tea, and it will not ferment then after 5 p.m. Otherwise, the fresh juice and fresh plant and fruit, it will ferment and increase the level of poison in us. And so it could be a matter of your choice. It could be also dry fruits, and it could be nuts and seeds like sunflower seeds, walnuts. You can also warm them up, but they already were dried. They've been dried by sunlight, and avoid using artificial vinegar, because vinegar is better to consume before 3 p.m. Because it requires much effort to digest it. But if it is vinegar from apple, it can be consumed even for supper, because it has alkali effect. And I have to say that this balance, which called in scientific terms pH balance, the balance of alkali and acids, this you regulate with your food consumption. And on the chart, you could already see that after 3 p.m. Let me bring this again to your attention. This look, underneath, you see that this pH balance, acid-alkaline dynamics of man during the day, and this is called cations of hydrogen cations with the plus, and that means more acidity. And our body, also in the blood and our flesh, the acid side dominates during the 3 p.m. And this time is good to consume that food stuff which is difficult to digest. Also, those conserves in the tins, food in the tins, you know, with the artificial dressings and artificial lemon juice. Whereas after 3 p.m., this alkaline condition predominates, and it should be more carbohydrates from the plant world, and also from the seeds. Yes, and you can. It's up to you what you like, your choice, because every region has their own habits, tradition, and you know this grain of the day, which from the spiritual science we learn, like wheat for Sunday, rice for Monday, etc. And then it brings into connection with the cosmic forces you much easily, and you feel more connected, even if it is a minute one grain or a couple of grains from this, and And you know, notice that for Saturday, I put lentils instead of corn, because corn now is mostly modified corn, especially in the
isn't there
Yeah, you
anymore.
took it out, yeah.
in the US. The corn is modified, and I found that this because Saturday relates to the Saturn, planet Saturn, and I found that the flowers of lentils are the same as for the corn flowers. This kind of violet, dark violet, a bit of purple in it. So the Saturn color is there. So lentils is quite good also for those who want more protein, and also nut and mash. Also, they don't have serum, the sulfur in it, because sulfur is no good for our thinking, and this like beans and because lentils does not belong to the beans, to the beans.
Lentils are not beans. He's saying beans aren't good because they have sulfur.
Yes, because sulfur sulfur, which is in beans but not in lentils, and also beans and soya, especially soya has, and beans and green Andrei, I need your help. Зеленый горошек, green peas, peas, green, you know, peas, this green round substance which people eat together with. It belongs to bean family, and this also has sulfur in it. Beans and peas, and it was known in the Pythagorean schools of initiation to avoid beans and peas, because it produces methane in our body, and methane
was against it.
Methane impairs our memory and our attention. Methane. So for children, especially, it is not very good because they cannot concentrate during their lessons. And any study process should be avoided. Also, if you consider that you need to bring children or adults for study meetings, avoid drinking black or green teas, because that the thoughts becomes scattered, it becomes very sophisticated but difficult to be grasped, difficult to concentrate. Whereas Rudolf Steiner suggested coffee as an artificial stimulant because of the nitrogen content in it, helps us to concentrate on the topic and to
coffee
and to bring up to the bottom, one can say, the subject, to find out everything what is possible about the matter you decided to learn, to study. And so for the supper, it's up to you, but it should be most carbohydrates, like cooked vegetables, yes, roots and leaves and stems, yeah, and fruits, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to real quick mention that we have about 15 minutes left and there's lots of questions. I know that there's questions in the chat and I see that someone's got their hand raised. The person who's got their hand raised, if you want to speak, go ahead.
Yes, it's me. It's a, hello. Can you see me?
You can see you, but you're a little
Okay.
quiet.
Yes, my question is, if one eats too many eggs, a person can have a lot of problems. I read this when Steiner talks about when he was a member of the Kafka philosophical group. Kafka asked Steiner to help him with all his problems with people, with his father and with women. And the answer that Steiner gave him was, "You eat too many eggs." So I don't know why he answered that. That's my question.
Sorry, I couldn't hear. What did Steiner say?
Kafka asked Steiner for his help, saying that he had too much problems in life. Things were very difficult, especially with his father and with women. And Steiner answered him one sentence. He said, "You are eating too many eggs."
Well, the eggs.
I don't know why he said that.
I think the eggs, especially the raw egg protein, the white of the egg, is very difficult to destroy, and also it contains the cosmic egg. Is a state of becoming, because it doesn't have differentiated layers of tissues, because when a hen sits on an egg and later it becomes chicken, and before that there is an embryonic process taking place, and the egg undergoes the tissue in differentiation, so that there are organ formation, etc. But before that, in the state in which people consume egg, it has the status nascendi, what is called in Latin, the status of becoming. It is a kind of cosmic state. But at the same time, the white egg, Rudolf Steiner mentioned on one occasion, can be used to combat the poison, the food poison. For example, if you have to rescue someone from the alcohol poison or food poison, you can give them the white of the raw egg, and then you help the person to survive. It's like antidote. And I think acting as an antidote, because antidote should bring account an image of the poison, and also it is like, as I said, in status of becoming. It has very much cosmic in it, but also it has nitrogen, and nitrogen already a symbol of astrality. Likewise, in the coffee beans, nitrogen, the coffee is rich in nitrogen, which becomes an artificial stimulant for our thinking. And this nitrogen also stimulates our thinking too much. and excess of nitrogen in the egg consumption may also cause this brain thinking, which Rudolf Steiner said, because of the mineral arrangements, our brain thinking is forced to think. Our brain is forced to think the materialistic concepts of life. It's not only reflection, but also our brain tends automatically to produce this kind of earthly thinking, what we perceive in the three-dimensional sphere in our sensible world. So maybe that person eating too much eggs overstimulated his materialistic thinking and became too much materialist and ruined his life. And that also protected him from chaining himself in the night time to the hierarchies, to the higher hierarchies, to the spiritual world. Because if a person during the daytime does not spend a minute, a moment to think about his spiritual origin, about God, about his spiritual duties, does not give his will to the spiritual aspects, like good deeds, and also even in his food consumption during the meal, thinking about the whence it comes from, who put their labor in order to produce this wheat grain and to deliver it to you, to all this process. We have to keep in mind all these connections, because this is what in the Lord's Prayer we say, our daily bread. And we have to think about our connection in terms of spiritual to the world, not only just swallow the physical stuff, like filling a petrol tank with the fuel, but thinking about spiritualization of the matter, and also that this matter which we eat will stimulate our ego, our astral body, our etheric body, and will contribute to the physical health. We can call our temple. And we have to look after our temple, because the condition of our temple affects the condition of our spirit. And also it will help us to keep in check our double. Otherwise, our double puts asleep our spirit, and our ego, being at sleep, in the sleeping condition, in the dreamy condition, is not fully awake, just waste time in our biography, and then we'll regret. So we have to be diligent and watchful.
Thank you very much.
Спасибо.
You are welcome. Пожалуйста.
Пожалуйста.
All right, I see that Virginia's had her microphone on a while. Did you have a question?
Yes, I wonder if you have written up suggestions for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and where sugar fits in, and the grains.
In Russian, there are some articles. I have to translate them in English and make available to you, to the English-speaking auditory readers. And in terms of sugar, you already remember, if you at the beginning of our talk, that the sugar level is already high in our blood from the morning, so that it's better not to give additional sugar through the meal. Otherwise, you destroy your pancreas, your pancreatic organ. If you would like to have your morning drink and experience, enjoy the sweet component, it's better to use either jam, which undergone the fruits undergone the temperature, or you use dry fruits, or instead of chocolate, there is it's called carob. Maybe you've heard about this from the tree, which now is popular among vegetarians and vegans. And also, I have to add to what you already heard about why it is important after 5 p.m. For example, if you decide to have your early supper before 6 o'clock, because at 6:30 I suggest you have to leave your table and stop eating on the day you had your meal consumption. Why? One of the reasons, because the worms in the digestion, they can easily go through this barrier, the low acidity level of our gastric juice, because before 5 p.m. the concentration of our gastric juice stops. It's like a barrier for any invasion of intestine, very undesirable worms, which in semen and spread in our intestine if we eat fresh salads or fruits after 5 p.m. We run a risk also to get this worms infestation. So to be on the safe side, you have to bring this food under the thermal influence cooking, so that you destroy those risks of the cysts of parasites. Have I answered your question?
Oh, you're still muted, Virginia.
Yes, yes, you have to some degree. I would love a listing, but you never mentioned honey.
Dear friends, it's very interesting subject, because from my practice, I noticed that honey has, in terms of anthroposophical description, honey has an excarnated effect. Sorry, honey has an excarnating effect. I would say that means that honey is better to consume after 6 p.m. Not before, because otherwise it argues with our pancreas, because our ego and astral enters our body in the morning and wants to be active, ready for actions, wants to work in the world and change the world. And if we eat honey in the morning, it's like we are trying to send back our spiritual aspects back, saying we don't want our spiritual aspects to be present in our physical and etheric. So it's a kind of battle, and in this battle our pancreas suffers. And I noticed that people run to contract diabetes or pancreatitis, the disease of pancreas. So honey is better to have after 6 p.m. I would say, according to my experience, because it helps to calm a person, prepare for the night time. And if it is a troubling child or somebody wants to get calm, a small amount of honey can help to get to a sleep.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Спасибо.
Пожалуйста.
Yeah, thank you all. I'll note that it's after 3 o'clock now in Chicago, and I know it's much later in Russia. We had scheduled things to go until now, but if everyone's comfortable, I don't want to make things stop, but we did agree to go to this time. How do you feel about that, all Yuriy?
I'm all right. I'm happy to answer your questions because, as we said at the beginning, the more people awake, the better we bring our humanity, our humankind to a desirable condition. The better is the expectation for the better future, because if we follow the healthy rules and when we are healthy and pursue the spiritual path with a better, a deeper way and have a better connection to the spiritual world, then we make our task better and succeed in the intention of the Godhead.
Thank you. Yeah, I certainly won't force things to stop. I see that Richard's got his hand up. If you'd like to ask a question.
Okay, well, this is a question that actually somebody else has asked. What about fermented foods? You want to unmute me?
Oh yeah, I could hear you.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, yes,
Okay.
yes.
What about fermented foods when you should have them, like sauerkraut or kimchi?
The fermented food means that it undergoes, it has undergone the process of bringing the substance to the higher level. So that means that in a way this fiery process is undergoing there, and it is less work for you to do the job. But on the other hand, it releases it releases other forces which stimulate our astral and etheric body differently. And also, you bring this question to the subject of the microbiomes which occupy our body. They are about from 2.5 to 3.5 kilos. And thanks to modern doctors and also anthroposophical doctors, now we can discuss and talk about this sum total of this microbiotes, microorganisms which are called microbiome. Have you heard this?
Yes.
Yes. And as I said, it's nearly 3.5 kilograms. You can imagine, and they are more than twice in terms of number of cells in our body, our own body. And, so it's kind of organism in our organism, like another double. So, and whatever we eat, it either brings, stimulates in a good or in a bad way this microbiome. And it affects our hormone system, our glands, because every gland likes to be in a kind of neutral environment. But the poison which we bring through the food, it brings more acidity. So the glands, they don't like to function properly in the acid surrounding environment. And the more acidity you bring to your organism, the more difficult you make for your glands to work, like pancreas and also the thyroid gland, and also adrenal glands and other glands, also of the neural system. So and the acidity also, apart from destroying our glands, it destroys our neurons.
It's not hearing. Yuriy is.
Yeah, you've been muted somehow.
So please tell me what the last phrase or word have you heard?
Also destroys your neurons, you said. A negative acidity has a negative effect on the nervous system.
Yeah, yes, thank you. So the microphone is on, I can continue. Such food as potato, tomato, and that pepper, thick pepper, I don't remember how you call it.
Nightshades. Nightshades.
Yes, nightshades family. They bring too much acidity. Likewise, soya products and peas and beans. They bring too much acidity. And as you learned, after 3 p.m., they would be quite harmful. But before 3 p.m., I also would avoid because there are plenty other nice foodstuffs, products which can satisfy you and fulfill the task of sustaining you. And the fermented food, I would suggest it just it adds to the microbiome. It brings in small amounts, in moderate amounts. It promotes the digestion because the ferments in the digestive tract, they like this fermented food, like from the cabbage, which was fermented in the salt, but not without adding a sugar compound, because sugar, as you heard, it brings too much acidity. The white sugar, especially, everything what comes from the white sugar, it brings too much acidity. So try to not to take sugar in the first half of the day, and consume it moderately if you don't want to substitute it with jam or honey in the evening, or with dried fruit. Sometimes you can also cook vegetables, roots. They are quite sweet when they are cooked in oven in the heat, and it can be suggested also for children to take to the school in the lunch pack.
Thank you.
Instead of chips, potato chips.
Jonathan, are you master of ceremonies? Are you recognizing people?
Generally, but as long as we're orderly, you don't have to wait for me. Please go ahead. And yeah, go ahead.
Oh, all right. Well, I'll just ask Yuriy, thank you. I would ask maybe brief comments about agriculture, specifically the benefits of foods grown using biodynamic methods related to what you've said about the food so far. But just maybe brief in this case.
Thank you for your question. The biodynamic products, they exceed the organic products which are considered to be on the top in the list of the food available today to the consumers, because biodynamic uses not the hybrid seeds, but the proper seeds, and also the way of biodynamic farming and gardening. It brings more cosmic forces into the ingredients in the protein, the fats, carbohydrates, and also the attitude of people who look after the plant. It affects the plant. It's like also when you see that the biodynamic farmers, they sing songs to the animals, and also they with joy live on the earth and look after the plants, and they love the earth and love their plants, and they, of course, establish a relationship with the elemental beings which work in that food which was produced with their warm hearts and care, and of course it brings the quality of life to this food, and it should be also kept and delivered in a proper way, that and cooked then before you take it as a meal, so that all these forces are saved, and in a prayerful mood you take this food with the gratitude, and then you feel different, like that lady which I mentioned in our anthroposophical chemical village, which feels much better, and she feels connected to the spirit, and clear thoughts, good memory, very good attention. So the biodynamic farming is ahead of everything what is available at the moment in terms of growing food which comes from the earth.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there any other questions? I see Charlene's hand raised. Oh, we can't hear you, Charlene.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much. The vitalization process, are you going to share that with Jonathan, a video or something, and then he can share with us? That
Sure.
sounds good.
Sure. You shall see. It is despite it is in Russian, you will understand the way of movement, because it brings the lemniscate. Lemniscate is at the basis of everything in our earthly state, because as you remember, our earth passed through the evolutionary processes, the old Saturn, old Sun, old Moon, and now we entered and we are in the proper earth evolutionary condition. And now as on the old moon, it was the spiral which was at the basis of that condition of our planet, but now we've got the lemniscate, which is at the basis of everything which comes to life on the earth. And you shall see the concepts like it would be a drawing on the video, and you shall see that you either hold a glass of water. It's better to use a container from glass or from ceramics or from metal, which is a special metal, you know, for drinking purposes. Steel, stainless steel, and then once you moved your glass of water, your container, or you do it with a teaspoon or with a stick, it's better metal stick or a glass stick, then you bring this water or any substance, milk, whatever, to a state of what is called virgin, the virgin state, the cosmic state of the substance. Because water which comes from the on the earth, from the depth lower than 90 meters, it requires this vitalization process. Otherwise, it is not beneficial for a farmer nor for us to drink. And also water which we get from the taps in our flats, it is a dead water, because it comes under the right angles. Whereas in nature, we don't see the water running this way. In nature, we see rivers and streams, brooks, they run in a fluid way, very movable. So, and once you vitalized water or whatever, you can put this into a bigger container, which should be also from this mentioned materials, not from plastic. Avoid plastic because plastic is very toxic. Even that one which is labeled for drinking purposes. After 3 days, plastic water kept in plastic shows undesirable bacteria in it. So avoid plastic. It has a harmful effect on water and every food stuff which you keep in such containers. It's better to keep, as you heard, in natural material containers.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions?
Dear friends, I think it's a good moment to stop and ask Yuriy to come again for a new presentation. And I think it's good time to say thank you. It's already after midnight in Moscow and St. Petersburg. Yuriy, thank you so much for your outstanding presentation, and we will call you again, definitely. Thank you, friends, and goodbye.
Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you for joining us.
Спасибо.
Thank you for your attention and questions.
Thank you very much.
Yuriy, are you available for personal consultations?
Yes,
Yuriy,
sure.
Just let us know if you're available for personal consultation as an anthroposophical doctor and also specialist in area of nutrition. So because looks like you are always running into another presentation when you're answering the question, which is extremely good because you are full of knowledge, as I know.
Yeah.
So, dear friends, if you are interested to connect to Yuriy, just let me know by replying, and I will contact to Yuriy, and I will put you together in contact.
Andrei, yes, we can. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, sure.
If you are interested, we can talk about how to avoid any virus contraction using this food rules. Because nowadays we've heard about this the so-called pandemic situation, and we can know how to avoid falling ill by following simple rules, eating rules. And also, if you once you became ill, how to recover quickly using the nourishment.
Okay. So let's schedule for January or February of next year already.
Yeah, but if
Okay.
you